Welcome to Module 9 of Climate Change, the Fight of Our Lives, from Emergency to Solutions. The title of this module is The Great Transition. First, Rob Delart will guide you into this landscape. Then I will add a bit to the puzzle. And finally, Iram Khan from SDGs Academy Pakistan will walk with you the last steps of this path. I hope you like what you see.
Welcome to this module of the World Climate School course on climate change. The title of today is The Great Transition and the Emergence of a Sustainable World. In this module, we'll talk about the immense makeover of our societies and economies, not just to fight climate change and other grave challenges that we are facing, such as water scarcity, overpopulation, overconsumption and stuff. But we're also talking about the opportunities of creating a much more beautiful and better world. Not only can we restore our planet's health, but we can create a thriving world based on a new value system of well-being for all and all life. We can create a more equitable world, which is more healthy, and which will create more happy people and more healthy and more relaxed societies. All of this should be in sync with nature rather than exploiting and destroying it, because that is one of the gravest things that are happening right now and that can do us in. Today's module will be presented by Hans-Jürgen Rasmussen and myself. My name is Rob Delart. Hans is a retired psychologist from Norway, a climate activist, and the founder of the World Climate School. I live in Brazil, where I work on forest protection, reforestation, and rewilding. I have studied philosophy. We are both members of the Extinction Rebellion and strong supporters of the great work of Greta Thunberg. I hope you will enjoy this module. Thank you. Why are we talking about this great transition? Because the facts are clear. If we go on the path we are on at right now, scientists make it very clear that we will run in a huge amount of trouble. And at some point we will lose the capacity to transform ourselves because the crises that will come at us, principally those that are fueled by climate change, but also others, will be too large and will overpower our societies, and we will not have the resilience to change anymore. So it's not just a nice idea to have a better world, it's actually a necessity, or else we are dooming our futures and those of our children. And wrecking the only home we have is the most stupid thing we could ever do, and that is what we are currently doing. And mind you, the window of opportunity is closing fast. We're talking about a big transformation that has to really start in full earnest this decade, because at some point the window will close. It isn't closed yet. We have solutions, but we are running out of time. So it is very urgent. And it's not a problem because the solutions are there. It is a matter of willpower. But it also means that we have to do it globally. We should be part of a global transformation of societies and economies. And actually of the way we as humans relate to each other and to nature. Because only if we do it with everyone is it possible to have the results that are needed to stave off these great challenges. But it doesn't mean that we have to do everything the same everywhere the world round. No, diversity is strength, and we have to do things locally everybody can do their own part in their own neighborhood, in their own community, in their own city, province, and state. So we have to reevaluate everything that we know about how to run our lives. And that's an enormous process. It's challenging, but it's also exciting. So the question is a sustainable and just society possible? If you think creating this sustainable and equitable society as a way to counter the crisis of climate change and other huge challenges, if you think it's impossible, I have a great surprise for you. Several smaller countries around the world are already far in creating these societies. Countries such as Costa Rica in Latin America, Denmark in Europe, and Bhutan in Asia are well underway to transforming themselves into these much better societies. Let us therefore take a look at this TED Talk about the Kingdom of Bhutan, a small country deep in the Himalayas on the border between China and India. Bhutan has pledged to remain carbon neutral forever. And in this illuminating talk, Bhutan's Prime Minister, Tshering Tobgay, shares his country's mission to put happiness before economic growth and set a world standard for environmental preservation. I hope you enjoy this TED Talk. Thank you.
Unfortunately, TED no longer allows us to embed their videos in our videos. So I will have to ask you to either follow the link you can see on the screen in a few seconds, or just go to the description below and click the link for the video there. So pause this video, click either one of those options, and come back when you have seen the TED Talk.
I hope you enjoyed the video about Bhutan and his inspiring Prime Minister. But you may think, hey, that is easy with a small population and a lot of land, with lots of forested land. Maybe, but don't forget that Pakistan had 40% forest cover in 1947, the year of independence. 40%, and probably in ancient times even more. Now it is barely 3, 4, 5%. Secondly, we need to understand that having a sustainable future is no longer just a nice thing to wish for, but a life-saving necessity, as the crises of our times are starting to roll in on the shores of our future, and then those of our children. In the next short video, you see a short introduction to scenario thinking. In scenario thinking, we're going to look at the possible futures that are coming at us, and then we can see what paths are there and what choices are there. What are the futures that could flow out of the current one? They are categorized in this video into conventional worlds, where the current situation is gradually improved, and it's sort of business as usual, but an improved
Some form of planetary society is taking shape, binding the world's people and biosphere into one global system with one destiny, but the outcome remains uncertain and contested. Taking a long view of history, we can see the increasing complexity of social organization, economies, and communications, and the acceleration of the transition from one system to the next. Out of the turbulence of global change, very different scenarios can emerge. Conventional worlds evolve without a sharp discontinuity or fundamental transformation. Dominant forces and values continue to drive globalization as developing countries move towards patterns of development in affluent countries. Barbarization scenarios see the erosion of civilized norms and institutions as conventional approaches prove incapable of mitigating social, environmental, and economic instability. Great transitions see the ascendance of new values and institutions that emphasize quality of life, human solidarity, and environmental sustainability. A conventional world's future could take two broad paths: market forces featuring open global markets, economic growth, deregulation, and privatization, or policy reform, with government-driven efforts to green the economy and eradicate poverty. Barbarization could lead to a fortress world, an authoritarian response to crises with bubbles of privilege amid seas of misery, or, if elites are unable to impose order, a breakdown into spiraling conflict, environmental catastrophe, and institutional collapse. Two great transition visions are eco-communalism, featuring localism, face-to-face democracy, and economic autarky, or a new sustainability paradigm, the focus of the Great Transition Initiative, which embraces global interdependence on the path to a humanistic, diverse, and ecological planetary civilization. In the 20th century, the hopes for a better future were crystallized in four great aspirations: peace, freedom, development, and environmental health. But the trends are perilous. Sustainability requires sharply bending these curves. A market forces future could succumb to its internal contradictions, ecosystem surprises, inequality, and domestic and international tension, leaving in its wake a fortress world mentality, mired in inequity, resentment, conflict, and xenophobia. Policy reform could take up the challenge, but is it enough? It is feasible in principle. The necessary technology and policies are available, but daunting in practice, given the scale of change required. The critical uncertainty remains: from where would the political will come? Most importantly, is this a desirable vision of the future, or a well-engineered global mall, rather than a place of human fulfillment? Conventional world strategies operate on the proximate levers that directly influence demographics, the economy, technology, and institutions. Such levers are responsive to short-term intervention. A great transition goes further, to the ultimate drivers that shape society and the human experience: values, understanding, power, and culture. They are subject to gradual cultural and political processes that expand the frontier of the possible by altering the basis for human choice. The transition would involve all aspects of culture, countering consumerism, individualism, and domination over nature, embracing systems thinking, stabilizing populations and creating sustainable communities, ensuring rights, eradicating poverty, and celebrating diversity, making the economy a means of serving people and preserving nature, building stakeholder partnerships at all levels, relying on renewable resources and industrial ecology. What social actors can lead the transition? Can intergovernmental organizations overcome nationalism and vested interests? Can transnational corporations become responsible global citizens? Can civil society unify around a common vision. Ultimately, a turn towards a great transition depends on the collective efforts of an aware and engaged global public. A global citizens movement is the critical missing actor on the global stage. Together, we can provide a fitting answer to the basic and urgent question: which world do we want?
I hope the video gave you a good idea of the possible worlds that are coming at us, the scenario thinking of the near future. Now I want you to look around you. Do you still see possibilities for a small gradual makeover of this society? A better version of the current one with less corruption and greed, more kindness and empathy? Where all people have a decent life and make a decent living? I think we are too late for this gradual option, this business as usual, but now in an upgraded version. I think that ship has sailed. We may have been able to do that a generation ago, when the challenges were still far off and not that great. But now we have the challenges of climate change coming at us. We have the challenge of overpopulation, of nature destruction. Too much has gone wrong and too much needs to be changed, that a simple upgrade is no longer a possibility. The stress in the system has become too large also. People are restless. They don't know exactly what to do. They're unhappy with their current lives. Since nobody wants the world to slide down into barbarism, what remains is that we put all our creativity, energy, resources and drive together to redesign our world, to redesign our societies, to redesign our economies and the way we treat air, water, soil, the way we treat nature and the way we treat each other. So let us start thinking about this great redesign. In this slide you see some of the principles and values of this new world, this new society, this new economy, what it could look like, what could be the design principles of a new and better world. You can look at them. One of them, the first one, we are all nature. We have to realize we are part of nature, and without nature we cannot live. We have to treat energy, water and soil with the value they are, because they're very precious. Without that we can't live. We cannot treat land like dirt. We belong to the land. It doesn't belong to us. It was there way before us and it will be there way afterwards. We are just transient beings. We need to think globally, but need to act locally, because everywhere circumstances are different. Nature is different, landscapes are different, climates are different, cultures are different. We need to realize that we borrow the land and our world from future generations, so we have to leave this place a better place than when we found it. And wealth, great material wealth, should be not the value we're after. Well-being should be the guide for all of us. Of course, it includes some income, there is no doubt about that. But it shouldn't be the central value. You can't eat money. Important in well-being is a community, a sense of community. Communities that thrive together, that form stable unities. And we have to realize, like in a good forest or in a natural biotope, diversity is strength. So we should allow a lot of space for all kinds of possibilities, all kinds of people, all kinds of cultures. And again, we shouldn't try to hoard all kinds of things that we can't need. Even the Pope needs 3 meals a day. Even the richest billionaire can't eat more than just a few meals a day. And we have to realize that while we're wasting right now so much things, actually in a society that works well, waste does not exist. So, if we're going to do this great transition, this great transformation, the question is, how do we get there? Because it's an immense task, and it's overwhelming if you start to think of it. The makeover of human society will be both global and based on universal principles, but also local, and it means something different for everyone, for every town, for every region, for every household, for every person. But we need movement everywhere in the direction of sustainability and of equity. Guidelines could be the Sustainable Development Goals delivered by the United Nations in 2010, which give the elements of what we need to look at, 17 different goals. But maybe what is most important is that we need to come together, to talk to each other about how we have to made such a mess of things and how we can change all of this. We need to talk to each other to honestly face the challenges and how we can do something about it. We need citizens' assemblies coming together and talk about a common vision for a common future. And this is different again for every town, for every school, for every company, for every organization of humans. We already have the solution. All the solutions are already there, and the few that are missing we will find. For instance, if you talk about our gravest problem, the increasing CO2 in the atmosphere, basically it is simple on paper. We have to get away from burning fossil fuels and do an energy transition, and we have to reforest the world and revegetate the world to take down CO2 from the atmosphere and put it in soil and in vegetation. But easy as it is said, it's not easy done, because humans need to come together to find the will to really make this change, and they will only do that once they have seen the full challenge of what will happen if nothing is done. So what we need is connection, inspiration, exchange of information, and very importantly, to empower and trust our youths, to take over from leaders that cannot make the transition, because many leaders that are now in place will not be able to do so. We need younger, more vital, more aware leadership. And what I say to people with children, young and older children, trust your children. They are smart. They sense the challenges and they are ready to take on the task. We are there to support them, to design a new world together. The good news is that more and more people, and especially youth, understand that we need this great reset of the economy and our societies to get us through these crises. And that we already have many answers, and there's lots of work to do, which means economic activity, sustainable economic activity for the future. The biggest problem is not the solutions, the biggest problem is getting us moving. But once people see the opportunities, the transformation will accelerate, and you are part of the solution, like everybody who's listening and participating in this course. Here are some of the elements we put in this slide, and I think you should memorize them and make your own lists. First of all, we will be busy as bees. Millions of jobs will be created in this great transformation. We need to think out of the box. Everything will be different, much more than you think so. So part of it is we have to create an energy transition from fossil fuels to sustainable energy. We will need to create a water cycle management transition, dealing much more wisely with water in our rivers, with precipitation, with water in our soils. We will need to create a food and agricultural revolution, and we will relocalize much of the economy. It's no use dragging things from the other side of the world to this part of the world while we may be able to do it just around the corner. One element will be the restoration of billions of hectares of landscapes and nature to rebalance nature. Because rebalancing landscapes, rebalancing hillsides that are now denuded will actually bring back a better climate, a better water storage, and better possibilities to grow crops. We will introduce the donut economy, the economy that doesn't go over the limits that what we can use from our planet, but also is equitable for all citizens. And we'll go into a circular economy. If something is made already, the design has already been thought of how to reprocess the material so we can use it in the next cycle. Waste does not exist. And we have to make communities more resilient. And we need to provide a basic income for everyone as a way of stability to keep society from falling apart.
A few years ago, I heard for the first time about the transition movement, and I was very inspired by it. I will now share with you some impressions from something that started in a small town by the name of Totnes in England, and I will show you what impressed me so much.
In 2006, an idea was born. What would a community-led response to the big challenges the world faces look like? A group of people in a small town started playing around with a set of principles, tools and values drawn from many great social change and cultural development movements of the past, but uniquely adapted to and refocused on the unique setting of now. They called it transition. They were clear that this was an experiment that needed people trying things out where they were and sharing both their successes and their failures. That first transition town unleashed itself in 2006. People in other places, initially in the UK and very rapidly further afield, started to hear about what they were doing and wanted to do it too. It started to spread. It began popping up all over the place, at first in small towns, then in urban neighbourhoods, in universities, on islands, in all kinds of unexpected places. A small charity called Transition Network was created to inspire, encourage, connect, support, nurture and train this rapidly growing network. Inspired by this approach, people started growing food in unexpected places, creating new food businesses, community energy companies, local currencies and so much more that we'll just show you some images that give a sense of the breadth of what they're doing. began learning how to run effective groups, work together and share their learnings. They poured their creativity and commitment into exploring together the changes they wanted to see and getting stuff to happen within themselves, within their group and across their neighbourhood. The idea began spreading internationally from Bologna to Brazil, from Japan to Pasadena. It won awards, ran amazing international conferences, and national hub organisations began forming to support the spread in nearly 30 countries. It appeared on television, radio and films, and even inspired novels and a musical. Its power as a dynamic tool for inspiring bottom-up, community-led action has been noted by politicians, researchers and many others. It has real impacts on people's lives, putting care and the creation of healthy communities at its heart. Many people are involved and are doing amazing things. Where might it go next? Well, that's kind of up to you.
The story you just heard about the transition in the town of Totnes and the way it has been spreading all over the world was brought to you by the voice of the founder, whose name is Rob Hopkins. Now, in this video, you will hear about the inner transition that is very much needed to go along with the outer transition.
So inner transition is the transition we need to make on the inside as we shift from our present unsustainable, destructive, competitive, consumer-based way of living to something that's much more connected, where we're connected with ourselves, with each other, with our community and with the environment and the landscape in which we live. In transition, we invite people to vision the future that they want. And one aspect of that is how we're going to meet our physical needs, how we get our energy and our food and our shelter and the sustenance that we need for a good life. But there's also another kind of transition, which is how do we get our inner satisfaction? You know, what gives us meaning in life? How do our relationships work? How do we make decisions together? So there's something about the inner journey that we also could vision. What does a healthy, connected, vibrant, sustainable community look like, and what does it feel like on the inside to be part of that? So if that's our vision for the post-transition world on the inside, the question for inner transition is, how do we get there? What does it look like, and what's the pathway to get to that different way of living together and making meaning and finding satisfaction in life with less material consumption? But inner transition, for me, brings the good news that material affluence is not what makes us happy as human beings. So there's research that shows that beyond just getting our subsistence needs met, increasing amounts of material consumption doesn't improve the quality or the satisfaction in our lives. So the inner transition is part of what we really need to understand. What is it about us as humans that enables us to feel connected, that our lives are meaningful, that our relationships are satisfying and rich. So inner transition points to this whole aspect of the transition that we're making, where there are real benefits to be gained about having much more satisfying human lives. And is that there's a whole global movement for spiritual growth and personal development and awakening. And there's also huge movements for ecological, environmental, social and political change. And inner transition is like where those two movements meet. So as we make these necessary changes to live in a sustainable way on the planet, what happens inside us and how can we support ourselves to make those changes in a really good way? So inner transition as part of a transition initiative, as part of a community making this transition, will look like people taking care of themselves, so taking time out from the stress and the possible overwhelm of dealing with these enormous challenges that we're facing, people supporting each other, people bringing really good skills in facilitation to have meetings where people leave feeling more energized than they started. It's people spending time out in nature or with each other or making or expressing themselves. It's about bringing art and beauty into the ways that we work, so that what we're doing as we make this really intense and demanding journey also feels satisfying and nourishing on every level of our being.
In the video, Rob Hopkins talked about the global network of transition initiatives. You get a good impression here. The world map will show you the overview, and there are many details from Europe, US and England. You heard the founder, Rob Hopkins, in the first video. Here he is in a much viewed TED Talk, which I highly recommend, but we don't have time to view it here. An important source for deepened and updated knowledge about the transition movement is the website transitionnetwork.org. And the movement has also a YouTube channel. Dive in and see what it offers. And now, let me finish with a video containing very short personal testimonies from the participants of the transition movement.
Fantastic.
It's about being sustainable, both resources, people, communities. It's about having a future, about making things work for people instead of for profit, for gain, making the economy work, making money work.
I would describe transition as permaculture on a community scale.
It's a shift to a more sustainable way of life, and particularly connecting with other people to make that shift happen.
Transition is the adaptation, improvisation and change, development towards a situation where we're not so dependent on fossil fuels and we're also adapting to climate change.
I'm going to be, looking forward to being a grandparent soon, and it's about my grandchildren and them having a future that's worth living in.
Some stuff you can only do as individuals, some stuff the government has to do for us, but actually there's a lot that we can do when we get together with other people and bring together the skills or the resources that other people have, and we can make change happen that way.
For me, it's about just accepting that it would be better if we used less oil sort of stuff, and about focusing on the positive aspects of community building and helping people do things for themselves.
I think transition's about people doing it for themselves, making the world a sustainable place for ourselves and not relying on big corporations, big government, somebody else to do it for us.
So rounding off, we can state that where we go is up to us, is up to you, is up to me, is up to everyone. Of course, we need to restore nature, because without nature there is no life. And the damage we have done to our atmosphere, to our water, and to our soils, and to our forests and other habitats is very grave indeed, and is actually a threat to our future. And we will need them in a new and better world to provide us with the services that they have always provided: food and water and healthy, clean air. But we will also need to aim at applying technology to make governments more efficient, decrease the necessity of transport, and provide online services such as learning and medical care so that they're freely available for everyone. As part of the homework that goes with this module, we would like you to have a look at a long but brilliant lecture by Jeremy Rifkin about the third economic revolution. This is a man who is a top advisor to both the current leaders of China, Xi Jinping, and German Chancellor Angela Merkel. His vision of the future world is very inspiring. And secondly, we would like you to put a pen to paper or start typing on your laptop to design your own future world, to start somewhere thinking about what it would look like. Thank you.
And in the last part of this module, Iram Khan will talk about first connecting human beings to nature, and in the second, reclaiming broken spaces.
Connecting human beings with nature. How societies can bring back nature into our lives. The growing body of research, combined with an intuitive understanding that nature is important and increased concern about the exploding use of smartphones and other forms of technology, has led to a tipping point at which health experts, researchers, and government officials are now proposing widespread changes aimed at bringing nature back into people's everyday life. Let's explore how it's happening everywhere around the world. Researchers and policymakers are now talking about park deserts, urban forest in cities and towns. Cities are adding or enhancing parks, and schools and other institutions are being designed with large windows and access to tree and green spaces or blue spaces as an aquatic environment. Businesses are increasingly aware of the desire among employees for access to green spaces. So they are creating more green working environment for their employees. The number of forest schools, for example, in Europe and America are popping up, which have been long tradition in Scandinavia and where much of the learning take place in natural settings in the outdoors. It has been mushroomed around the world where nature is the biggest source of inspiration for school-going children. Then there are many organizations I should mention. Children in Nature Network. This is founded by Richard Louv. He is one of the naturalists and is focusing on how we can connect again the human species with nature. There are many ways in which we as individuals, we as urban species can reconnect ourselves with nature again. So in this video, I'll try to give you a few examples, and obviously you can come up with many different new ideas. For example, we can encourage our children, we can encourage our family, we can encourage our students to go for a walk in parks. We can start with, for example, 1 hour per week, and then we can increase the time. We can also add little bit wilderness in our backyards, not only in our homes, but also in our educational institution or our working environment. We can also create activities, for example, keeping pets in our houses, going for some kind of gardening practices, not only in houses but also in our school backyards. Then we can also start feeding birds, for example, and we can teach children in many innovative ways. And again, I would suggest that instead of living for 12 months in your congested cities, let's take out some time and go for the wilderness areas, for mountains, for deserts, for oceans, and for beaches. This is how we all can connect ourselves with nature. Thank you. Today's topic is Reclaim Broken Spaces, Connecting Leaders of Tomorrow. So, what is this Reclaim Broken Spaces? What does it mean? And how we can create a society where we can reclaim all the broken spaces? Naturally, for the last almost 50 to 60 years, we are living in a society which is not only broken from all dimension, but it is reaching the point of no return. We need to envision a greener and healthier environment for our communities, for our children, to understand the cost and benefits of implementation of this whole concept. Environmental researchers are constantly reminding us of the dangers and threats our world is facing, starting with global warming and extending to extreme water crisis in cities. Scientists and communities, governments and agencies are struggling to combat the change. We believe that for a short term, we have to take immediate measures to minimize the damaging impacts. But if we want to work on a long-term basis, we have to start from the scratch to produce a new generation of youth who not only think about solutions to the vast environmental problems, but also participate in creating that sustainable environment. So, what will be the action plan of this project? Around the world, people who are fed with environmental degradation and the breakdown of their communities come together, transform broken vacant lots and spaces in their neighborhoods like trashed out streets, corridors, dirty parks. They are all called broken places. In civic ecology practices like community gardening, wetland restoration, river and beach cleanups, tree plantation, they are all means for people to express resilience and rebuild communities marked by disaster and disinvestment. So it's like people initiating these small projects like you and me, started from school, colleges, universities, and our neighborhoods. First of all, you need to identify that broken space. Maybe if it's an area in your school, in your college, in your university, maybe it's a corner of a street which is a broken place where when you go there you feel bad and you feel sad. And then you think that how I can reclaim this whole environment to make it a healthier environment for all of us living in that particular neighborhood. Right now, if you go and explore in internet, you will find out that there are many youth, many groups of children around the world who are working on this kind of special project, and they are reclaiming the broken spaces in their educational institute in their neighborhoods. More than half of them, after research, it came as a conclusion that more than half of them feel that in their country, young people have been marginalized and excluded from economic and social life. So if our youth and if our children are feeling that they are kind of detached from participating in this whole social ecosystem, by this project, we want to involve them, we want to engage them again. Facing this challenge with social tensions rising and a clear need to tackle the separation and alienation the community needs to rise on its own and provide solutions in an innovative way. Now, it's our duty as educators, as teachers, to identify those places with the help of these children and youth and start thinking about what can be done. I cannot give you all the solutions, but what you can do, you can come up with innovative answers. Lastly, I just want to add that with these kind of projects, we really want to unite the global youth societies to come together, discuss, learn and share the knowledge about global environment, including consumption, waste, smart cities, sustainable transition, water wars, energy, green cities, and most importantly, conservation of nature. Young people can be grouped together to create green spaces where creatively environmental and social action plans can be planned together. Okay, so what will be the objectives of this whole project? First, environmental awareness. So this whole project aims to prepare young people to take more action, more positive actions, and feel responsible to play their role in their societies. It also provides young people with the opportunity to learn directly about how to work together to create a better world for themselves and for the next generation. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being with us till the end. About homework, I remind you that you need to see the TED Talk, which was not allowed to be embedded here. The link is in the description below, and also other items of homework will be there. So I hope it's not too much. I hope you'll enjoy it, and see you next time.